So in this video, let's deep dive into the second round and third round asked to me in open text. Okay, so first round interview, I've already discussed with you like what all sort of question has been asked to me for 8+ years of experience. Okay, in the field of Java, Spring Boot, and microservices. So let's understand in round two and round three. So basically, round two was technical round two, and third round was mostly managerial round only in open text. So let's understand and see what all kind of questions you may face in open text. So let's get started. So let's start with round two technical interview. So let's see what all type of questions has been asked. So first question was implement any design pattern of your choice. So basically this question will test your design pattern skills. Like basically what all design patterns you have actually implemented in your coding, okay, in your actual project implementation. So there are some design patterns which are most frequently used, like builder design pattern in Java side. I'm telling builder design pattern, factory design pattern, facade design pattern, strategy design pattern, observer design pattern. These are commonly used design pattern. So on the basis of that you can tell, okay, and along with that singleton design pattern also you can tell, because mostly questions are asked alongside singleton, somewhere around strategy, somewhere around factory, observer. These type of questions they will focus upon mostly in design pattern. So yeah, so they can ask you towards writing down break free thread safe singleton design pattern. So how can you create those kind of design patterns? So they may tell you to write a code. For me also, there was one interviewer who told me to write the code to create break free singleton design pattern, and should be thread safe as well. So you should be ready with the answer in your mind, like how can you implement break free. So if you know, singleton design pattern can be broken in 3 steps. So one is via reflection. Okay, through reflection you can break the private constructor in singleton. Second is while doing the deserialization. So while doing the serialization, there is one hash code that gets generated. While doing the deserialization, it will generate a different hash code. So basically it will break it. So how will you resolve that? And third is via cloning. Okay, so if you do cloning, it will create a different hash code altogether. So basically by these 3 means you can break the singleton design pattern. So how can you resolve all of them? So these are the questions that can be asked. Okay. Second question is how can we break that we have already discussed. How can we break it and how can we resolve it? For reflection, we can throw some illegal state exception, some checked exception we can throw. Okay. For to resolve that deserialization problem, we can make use of read resolve method, and you can return the reference directly. It will resolve the problem of breaking singleton design pattern. Basically it creates new object while doing deserialization. No, so that problem will get resolved if you override read resolve method. And third way is in clone method. If you throw clone not supported exception, then it will, whenever it will try to clone the object, new object it will try to create, then it will not allow them to create a new object if there is one object already created. So these are the 3 things. If you can go in depth into tutorials of Baldung and other resources, you will get to know each and everything. And I have created separate video as well on my YouTube channel. You can go through them. You will have the understanding like how we can break the singleton design pattern step by step. You can go through those videos as well. Next question was what is mark and sweep algorithm? So these questions are very much common in interviews, like how garbage collector work. Okay, how what are the strategies, what are the algorithms are present in JVM with the help of which it cleans up the unused object references. What all algorithms are being used? So there are multiple garbage collectors, right? So one of the type is like G1 G1 garbage collector, JETC garbage collector in the recent, and previously it was like mark and sweep algorithm, concurrent mark and sweep algorithm. So these questions are being most commonly asked around mark and sweep algorithm. How mark and sweep algorithm works? Okay, so basically it will just mark those objects for which there are already some references pointing to that. It will mark those objects. So let's suppose there are A, B, and C. Few object references are there which are being marked by some other object, that is some reference are being pointed to that object. So those reference pointed object which is not free will be marked by JVM. And whatever pointers, whatever objects or references are there which are not being marked, that will be eligible for getting cleaned up in the Eden space or in a survivor space. So if you see in the memory management model, there are two things, right? Eden space, survivor space in the young generation, and in the there is old generation where there is like perm gen, meta space, those things are present. So the object can be anywhere. Okay, so basically any new object, if it gets created, it goes into young generation space where there is like Eden space, survivor space. So their frequent cleaning is happening via garbage collector. So their mark and sweep algorithm works. So what is concurrent mark and sweep algorithm? That can be one of the follow-up questions. So you can just try to learn it by yourself, like what's the difference between mark and sweep and concurrent mark and sweep. That can come as a follow-up question. So next question is, what happens when memory of application becomes full? So it may happen, right? There are like millions of records are coming and your code is not able to handle that many amount of records. Maybe your application is not that much scalable as of now. The code is not being scaled up. It is not written in that format, like it can handle millions of requests from the client. So what will happen if memory it goes out of memory? Okay, so there are few things we have to understand, like for few steps you can do, like increasing the JVM memory space, like hyphen XMS, and you can provide the size of it, like how much GB you want it. So that way you can increase it, but that will create a limitation. You can't increase up after a certain threshold. So you have to take some measures. You have to understand like what is the upper threshold of your application that it can handle, and if you want it more and more scalable, then what you can do, you have to make sure like you have to get rid of those things that may cause memory leaks, okay, or out of memory errors. So there are certain precautions you have to take care, like you should make use of private resources so that unnecessary objects which are not getting cleaned up, so that will get automatically cleaned if you use private resources. It has inbuilt cleaning feature. So once any stream or any reference like buffer reader, buffer writer is being created, it will automatically get cleaned once the work is over. So this is the important thing. Second thing is, you should not make use of any static field references which is binded at the class level, because the life cycle of that static reference is linked with the class. Okay, so until and unless the entire class gets garbage collected or gets removed from the entire flow, that static field will still remain alive in the JVM, which will take a lot of space, right? So it will create a lot of problems. So avoid making use of any kind of static field references. And other references also, they're like, don't make use of any recursive loop, don't make any recursion calls, so it may fail in production if it is being tested with large set of data, if all edge cases are not being handled properly. So don't make use of any recursive calls. And at the database level also, we have to think of, like, you should make proper indexing, you should create proper caching strategies, like read through, write through strategies. You should implement caching mechanism, proper Redis level caching mechanism you have to implement, because Redis is having their own Redis server, okay, which has its own RAM, which can execute like GBs of data it can execute in a second. So it is faster as well, and it can handle that much load as well. So there also question can come, like Spring Boot is having its own caching mechanism with added enable caching annotation, then why we are moving ahead with Redis servers for caching? So this can be also one of the follow-up questions. So those kind of internal intricacies are important to get cleared up in the interview, because they may cross question, okay, why we are choosing this, which microservices you have worked upon, which caching mechanism you have implemented, what is horizontal and vertical partitioning. Okay, so you should partition your database table into either horizontal or vertical. If you want to, if let's suppose there are billions of records coming in production and you want to make it work efficiently, so in that case you can break the entire table into multiple tables with limited set of data, so it will make the performance faster. That is basically called as horizontal partitioning, which is sorting. So these are the things that you should take care of, so that these kind of problems doesn't occur in future. Okay, so next question is, what are the benefits of concurrent hash map over normal hash map? Okay, so as you all know, concurrent hash map is for concurrency. If let's suppose there are millions of user concurrently tries to do some read operation, then in normal hash map it will not allow, because hash map is not thread safe. Normal hash map, it is faster, but it is not thread safe. That's the problem. So if thread safety is the concern, then always and always go ahead with concurrent hash map. Why? Because it provides segment level locking. So if there are like n number of users are coming, so it depends upon the buckets, the array of buckets, right? So at a time, if there are like 15 array of buckets, okay, 15 buckets, then what will happen? It will parallelly allow 15 threads to log the resource, to log the bucket, and uh, do some read or write operations. Okay, which is not there with the help of synchronized hash map or normal hash map. So that's why if concurrency is the concern, then always and always preferred is concurrent hash map. Okay, and if concurrency is not preferred, if you want to go ahead with synchronization, that also is fine. Then go ahead with normal hash map, which is much faster. Obviously, right? If there is no proper synchronization required, then normal hash map will automatically become faster. If you want if you want asynchronous way of doing task, that will be faster, for because it works parallelly, multiple threads are working parallelly, but it will be a little bit slower as compared to normal hash map flow. So depending upon requirement, you should choose which one you should go ahead with. Okay, so this was one of the important question, and linked with this question, there are multiple type of hash maps, right? There is like identity hash map, enum hash map, weak hash map, synchronized hash map, concurrent hash map, hash table, normal hash map. All these things you should have an idea of it. Okay, they make cross question on any kind of map. And important thing is what all data structures are present within that hash map. How can you create your own custom hash map? Okay, what all fields you will create while creating your own custom hash map? What is the internal implementation of a hash map? So these kind of questions all are interlinked with each other. Once you know how hash map works internally, then these questions is like a cakewalk. Okay, so there can be like 15-20 questions around hash map, but once your core concepts are clear, then these type of questions you can very easily handle. Okay, so let's jump on to next question. Next question is, what is class not found exceptions, and how can we debug it? So this is very common exception that mostly people are being asked, and I am also being asked, like what's the difference between class not found exception and no class def found error? This is one category of question. Another category, another kind of question can be like, what is class not found exception and how can we debug it? So basically, whenever there is Java jar version mismatch, okay, so when one application is communicating with another application, and let's suppose there is a version mismatch of that jar package for one of the application, then it will not be able to find the source of that class in the previous version. So in those kind of scenarios, class not found exceptions can occur. So in that scenario, we have to first find it out, like from where exactly there is version mismatch happening, where exactly, what's the root cause of this jar version mismatch, from which class it is throwing that this exception. So that way you can trace it out, like exactly from where it got started, and then you can remove that jar and you can update with a newer jar version, and in this way you can resolve this class not found exception. Then question can be about like, what is 403 access code error, what is 401 error? So these kind of questions can be asked, like what is 403, what is 401? So 401 is unauthorized personal access. Okay, so it is written unauthorized, but it's actually authentication issue. That means the server doesn't know you yet. So once you sign up, once you register yourself with your username and password, the server will be knowing you. Then you are authenticated. Once admin has given you the authentication, like you can able to go inside this website. That is first level authentication. And if that is not authenticated, then 401 will come. Now let's suppose you have been authenticated to go into that particular website. Then the next set of error can come, which is 403 error, which is access forbidden issue. So what is this access forbidden issue? Access forbidden issue is nothing but it's kind of authorization error. So server now knows you, like who are you, but server has not given you access to few restricted website which is being accessed by admin people only. So if admin has given you access to those particular restricted website, then only you can access those particular websites. Okay, so that access requires authorization from the upper management level. So if that is not provided to you, then this 403 access forbidden issue will come. So this is the difference between 401 unauthorized issue and 403 access forbidden issue. I hope you got a clarity on this. So understand this line very clearly. This is very important question. It's scenario based question. So there is a DB admin who doesn't have write access. So he wants developers to write code to remove duplicate employees and send the list to DB admin for processing. How can we achieve this? Just try to think it out once. How can we achieve this implementation? So basically, one DB admin is there who has newly joined, who doesn't have write access as of now. So he want all the developers out to write the code so that it will remove the duplicates. So we are having the list of all the employees which are being fetched from database. Now our task is to remove all the duplicate employees. Okay, and we have to send that list after removing the duplicates to DB admin so that DB admin can do some kind of work on top of it. So how can we do that? So we are having list which allow duplicates. It's having some group of employees list. Okay. So now how can we remove duplicates from the list? It's very common thing. So we have to basically override equals method. Okay. So if you know, list doesn't require to override hash code method. Now this is the homework for you to understand, like why for list hash code implementation is not required. If it is set and map, hash code implementation is required. But for list, hash code implementation is not, it's optional to implement basically. Why? Because list doesn't implement hashing mechanism. Okay. So if you override equals method properly, then still list will work. Okay, so here what we have to do, you have to override equals method, and whatever employee parameters, constructor parameters are there, like ID, name, age, salary, address, those all things needs to be implemented in the equals method with the right logic, like based upon what you want. So here it was on ID. For me, it was told like based upon ID, you need to find the duplicates. So we can compare them with object.equals method. We can compare the ID like this dot ID comma the current ID being passed. So if the same set of employee based upon ID, employee ID, which is the primary key, is repeating again the next row, that means it's duplicate and it will get removed, okay, from the list. You have overwritten equals method. So what you can do, you can pass it into a set, because list will allow duplicates, right? But set will not allow duplicates. You can convert the list type of employee object to set type of employee object. So if we do that, and if you have overridden equals method and written your own logic to remove duplicates on the basis of ID with object.equals method, then automatically if you convert it to set type, then duplicate records will be removed and you will get the unique set of employee IDs. So this way you will get the unique employee records and you can send it to DB admin for further processing. So this is the way you can work ahead with. So next question was design library management system. So again, it's a system design kind of thing. So you have to explain functional requirement, non-functional requirement. So what are the entity mapping relationships? Those all things you have to explain. Okay. So first you have to give the high level design, like what is there from the upper brief level. So there will be like a library will be there. So there will be librarian who will be assigned. Then there will be students who will be going there to register a book for 7 days. Okay. So if they are studying over there, so there are a lot of things, like there is one library can have n number of students. Okay, and there is one book also. In itself there are like n number of books. There are categories of books as well, like fiction book, non-fiction book, electronics book, computer science book. So that mapping also needs to be there, like which is the subject, and subject to book mapping, student to book mapping. Then librarian has access to all the books, and whenever student is trying to access that book or issue that book, then student details needs to get registered in the librarian's laptop. So those all registration purpose should be measured. It should be logic should be written. Okay, then entity relationship mapping, Hibernate one to many to one entity mapping should be there. Then the question was asked like, how will you make it scalable? Okay, so you need to have a horizontal partitioning over there. Some of the books are most frequently accessed. You can implement caching mechanism. Like if they're like, it's a very big library, then you can make use of Redis cache. If it's like a very small library, then you can make use of normal caching with @enable caching annotation. So these kind of things you can implement. Then how can you make it highly available? Okay, so to make it highly available, then there should be instances at each geographical location that needs to be there. So the cloud server needs to be deployed at each geographical location. So how those things can be communicated with each other, so that if one of the instances gone down, so library will also have the branches. So let's suppose at some point of time one of the library got fired. Okay, so all the books gone now, so they need backup also from where they can import some of the books if that particular library is again rebuilt. Okay, so those backing mechanism also needs to be implemented. So there are a lot of things we have to think about. Okay, so depending upon that you need to explain. I hope you got the idea. If you want deep and deeper analysis on this particular topic, then you can comment it down below. I will create a separate dedicated topic on this. Okay, as of now we have to focus upon only open text interview related questions. So next question is, yeah, so we have two tables. We have department table, we have employee table. So now there is one requirement for us, like whenever some issue occurs while saving employees. So basically we are saving employees, then some issue is coming. Why? What? The department and employee records both are not getting rolled back. Okay, so if I'm saving employees, while saving employees some issue came. Okay, with one of the employee record there is some mismatch in records, or there is some issue with any of the columns of that employee record, because of which employee record got some unique constraint violation exception while saving, or some issue is coming while saving into database. Then what is happening? Department records are not getting rolled back, only employees record are getting rolled back. Okay, so how can you resolve this kind of problem? So you can add accurate transactional annotation. Okay, so if you want to roll back department record as well as employee records both, which means child parent relationship, if child data is getting rolled back, then parent record also should get rolled back. So you need to have added transactional annotation with rollback for equal to exception dot class. You can add it at the class level, then whatever logic is written beneath it, that entire set of transactions will be rolled back if the event is not successful. Okay, so this is for the first part. Then if you don't want department to get rolled back, only you want employee to get rolled back, then in that scenario you have to add transactional over that particular method where employee saving logic is written. So what will happen? Whenever employee issue is coming with respect to employees, then employees data will get rolled back to previous state, but department data will get stayed in the database only. But depending upon our requirement, we need to perform our action. Second question, if I want to fetch department, then employee records should not get fetched. So there is department, there is employee. One department can have n number of employees. Okay, so now I want, like if I'm fetching department, I need only department records. I don't want employee records which is present in some other table, let's suppose. Then how can we achieve that? Just think on this. So basically there is department entity, there is an employee entity where one department has many employees, like one-to-many mapping. Okay, so at the department side, which is owner side, we will be writing mapped by, and we have to pass that employee ID. Okay, in that particular mapped by field, okay, which is list of employee in department entity, and there basically we have to write one particular field, you have to add it. Okay, in one-to-many one-to-many annotation, you can add one thing like fetch equal to fetch type dot lazy. Okay, so this particular line you have to add in one-to-many annotation. Okay, so once you write fetch equal to fetch type dot lazy in list of employee in department entity, then what will happen? Once you try to fetch the record from table, okay, any department records from table, then it will not fetch employee records from the table. Okay, but this is very important field that you need to add it. Okay, and along with that there is one more field that we have to pass. Let's understand third question to see like what is that particular thing we can add. Okay, so now next question is, if I want to save department, then employee details for that department should also get saved. But whenever we have to do delete or updation of department, then it should not affect employee records. Okay, but this is one of the requirement as well. So how can we implement this requirement? So in the same one-to-many annotation, there is one field called cascade. I hope you are aware of this keyword, cascade. Okay, so there are multiple ways of cascading. So what is basically cascading? So cascading is basically whenever one of the entities is being made some change, then its connected child entities will also have that impact depending upon what kind of cascading you are making use of. So cascading is like a chain of connections. Like if one of the if one place at one point some issue is coming, then it will be a cascaded effect into another services as well. So if multiple services are connected with each other, so let's suppose third microservice, let's suppose some example I'm telling you, third microservice is having some issue, and if you have not implemented fault tolerant mechanism over there, okay, so circuit breaker is not implemented over there, and what will happen? Third microservice fails, it will give information to second microservice like it's not working, so second microservice will also fail, then first microservice will also fail. So it will be like a cascading failures of all the microservices. Okay, so similar to that, you can imagine like if you are saving department, okay, so if one particular department there are like thousands of employees, okay, so in that scenario if one department saving to database got failed due to some reason, then all the employee details will not get saved in database. Okay, so there is a cascading failure. So for that there is one field that we need to add in one-to-many annotation, which is cascade equal to cascade type dot, and here there are various type of cascade types, which is enum. So it can be like persist, it can be update, it can be merge, it can be all. Okay, so here the focus is upon saving to persist data in database. So if I'm persisting department related records, then employee records should also get persisted. But if I am doing deletion or updation of the department, then employee records should not get deleted or updated. Okay, so what we have to pass over here, we have to do cascade equal to cascade type dot persist. Okay, because I want to get saved, I want entity of employees to get saved when department is getting saved, but not other actions should happen like updation or deletion. Okay, so we have to pass specific and enum, which is persist. But if you want to do all kind of operation, like if department is I am saving, updating, deleting any ID, then automatically employee record should also get updated. Then in that scenario, we have to make use of cascade type dot all, so that if department is being met any kind of changes in department table, then automatically employee records should get updated. I hope you got the clarity like how these things are interlinked with each other. Okay, so now let's jump on to next. So now how does Spring Boot application starts? Okay, so this is also one of the common questions that is being asked starting from 2 years to 5 years to 8 years to 10 years. This question is most commonly asked. How can you start your Spring Boot application? Okay, so Spring Boot application gets started with the help of, there is one annotation. There is @Spring Boot application in the main method if we have focused upon. So it consists of three kind of annotations basically: @configuration, @enable auto configuration, and @component scan. So basically it configures all the dependencies in the class path and it will put those dependencies. So you don't have to manually configure anything. Okay, and then it will try to scan for all the component classes so that whenever you are starting the Spring Boot application, then automatically there is a Spring container that will inject all the dependencies. Okay, so whenever you are starting the Spring Boot application, so it will first hit the Spring Boot @Spring Boot application, then bean lifecycle will get started. So basically previously when we are making use of XML type, so we were using application context. So there are various ways to initialize beans, right? With the help of application context, we can create like class path XML application context. We can pass the reference and then we can get the bean, and then you can move ahead with the service layer business logic. So those all things are there to initialize the beans. Okay, so if you want to just start the Spring Boot application, then you can configure the Tomcat dependencies are already there. Okay, so just you have to add properties file, like profiling you have to set up, but what kind of profile you need to start with, like dev profile. Okay, so which kind of profile you want to start, so you can give that in the application.properties file. You can create application-dev.yaml file, and then you can just start the server. It will get started at 8080. So initially it will go ahead with the init method, okay, where there is like a pre-construct annotation is there, pre-construct. So whatever before bean construction, whatever things are there, it will process that. Then post construct, after initialization of bean, after dependency of bean injection happens, then what will happen? Those post construct bean will happen, and then there is pre-destroy method which will destroy the bean after the flow is over. So these all things happens behind the scenes. Okay, I hope we got the clarity. Okay. Next question is, what triggers on starting Spring Boot application? So this thing I have already told you. Okay, just now I have already told you. So as soon as you start, bean initialization occurs. It goes through the life cycle of init method, pre-construct, post-destroy, those things. Okay, and then it will start with that Spring Boot application in the main method. From there, it will try to find out like which particular endpoint the client is requesting. So if there is API gateway, so it will hit API gateway, and API gateway will reroute that client request to the particular endpoint depending upon the load balancer. So in the scalable microservice application, there will be one API gateway which route the client's request to a particular load balancer, and load balancer will decide like which particular instance of that controller endpoint will that request get redirected to, depending upon which instance is having lesser load. Okay, so this is the actual scenario how these things are working internally. Okay, then what if I don't want to initialize beans at runtime? So this is also most commonly asked question. There can be like 50 to 60 beans. Okay, I don't want to initialize some of the beans. Then how can we implement that? So there is one annotation like conditional on property annotation. I hope you are aware of this. So if you don't want to unnecessarily eagerly initialize some of the beans, I want some of them to configure our beans. After our bean configurations, I want to give for some of the beans, and some of the beans I don't want at the server startup. Okay, for that I need to add a direct conditional on property annotation. There is like a prefix we have to add. The prefix and suffix is nothing but whatever you are writing in application.properties or YAML file. So it will take that as a prefix, suffix, and then having value. So if having value is true or enabled, then only the property will be taken, and if that condition is satisfied, then it's true, it's there in the properties file, then only bean will get initialized. If having value is false, then it will not get initialized. Then there is match if missing, and match if missing property. So if that field is available in properties file, then only it will match and it will create the bean, or else it will not create the bean. So these are some of the things. So try to learn at the conditional on property annotation so that you get the clarity on these concepts. Okay. Then there was some Kubernetes question like how to restart the pod. So I was not that much aware of this because there was DevOps team who was handling this entire set of pipelining scripts, pod restarting if some issue happens. But whatever things I was aware of, I have explained to them. So with the help of restarting the pod, basically you need to write command like kubectl, then restart command you need to write so that you can restart a pod if some issue occurs. Okay, and how many pods can run on a single node? So in one node there can have like separate set of pods which are by default being set like around 1000 or 1200, somewhere around that it has been set, but it depends upon number of cores of your CPU. It depends upon like how much CPU strength is there. Okay, depending upon that only number of pods gets decided. So if the core strength of your PCU, of core PCU, core CPU is having lesser number of cores, okay, so lesser number of pods will get started. So it totally depends upon your cores of CPU. Okay, so these are the things, and some other kind of question can also come like what is ingress? Ingress in Kubernetes is like a API gateway to route a particular flow. Okay, so some Kubernetes questions which are most commonly asked, you can go through that, so you can answer those kind of questions. Okay, so Docker, Kubernetes, those kind of questions also you can cover. Very few questions will be asked, but still it is necessary to go through them as well. So next, let's come to round 3. So it was a managerial round basically. So in this, there was one manager who came, which was a tech hiring manager team. So that person took my managerial round, and few good questions that has been asked by him. So let's see what all kind of questions has been asked. First question is always about project. In any interview, technical interview, managerial interview, any interview you go, first question will always be about project. What was your roles and responsibility? So basically question pattern will slightly vary from technical to managerial rounds. In technical rounds, they can go deep into your technical implementation, what you have actually implemented. But in managerial round, they will not ask any technical questions much. In managerial round, they will first try to understand the system design of your project, how your application is working on a high level thing. Okay, HLD basically they will try to understand of your project. Is there any caching mechanism implemented? How your application is scalable, available for a billions of users at a time. Okay, so if the system crashes, then how will you create a backup? So small questions which are like commonly asked questions, which the problems which may happen in general applications, those kind of questions can come. And what were your roles and responsibility? Were you leading a team of some people or not? Have you reviewed any of your peers PR or not? So these kind of questions can come. You should be ready with these type of questions. Okay, and your projects, you should be very much thorough in your project, like what all design patterns you have implemented, what is the high level architecture of your project, and have you made use of any multi-threading application, how it is working, how multi-threading is working in your application. Then end-to-end flow, they may ask you like what kind of cucumber frameworks if you have made use of, like how you have done your smoke testing or integration end-to-end testing. Those kind of questions can also come. Okay, so what kind of methodology have you followed, like agile methodology or waterfall methodology? So those kind of questions can come, so you should be ready with those. Second is what was my roles and responsibility. So I've already told you, you have to explain it very at a broad level basically. So what was your role? So I told like I was working as a senior principal consultant at Genpact. So there my main role was to understand the requirement and to implement the requirement by discussing with the lead and the client, like what all things we have to implement. And then after doing all kind of edge testing, we are delivering it to the client after doing the testing. Okay, and we are deploying it on PCF. Okay, so just tell what you have actually done, because if you try to tell something which you have not done, so they may cross question you, and if you're not able to answer them, then it will create a bad impression and they will get a hint like you have not done something, and it will be a cascading connection. I've already told you about cascading failure, right? This can happen here also. They may understand like you have not implemented and you are just bluffing that like you have implemented this. So tell whatever you have done. If you haven't implemented those things, so don't tell. Okay, whatever you have done, tell. And if you are aware of those terms you are using, then only you can tell. Maybe some things you haven't implemented, but be ready with the cross question surrounding that. So be ready with those kind of questions as well. Okay, so this was about roles and responsibility. Next question is, have you led a team before? Yeah, this is a very common question for senior developers, not for junior ones or mid-level ones. So if your experience is around 4 years or less than 5 years, so this kind of question will not come to you. If you are having above 5 years of experience, then this question is very common. Like, have you led a team before? How have you divided the task among your teams? How are you reviewing your peers, PR? These kind of questions will be asked after 5 years. Okay. And if there is any issue in production, how did you resolve them? So if you see, production issues are most common. Like out of 100 companies, 80 companies will have some or other production issues keep on coming regularly. So that's why managerial person always try to track you based upon what kind of issues you have faced in production and what are the steps you have taken to resolve those. Okay, so production issues are common. So first of all, you need to see the virtual VM threads. Okay, so visual VM is somewhat a monitoring tool that you can use to track like what all threads are running. And parallelly, there is like thread dump. There is something called as thread dump, which creates a snapshot of all the threads running in a production, which can track and see the stack trace of all type of issues that are coming over there in the production level. You can create a dump of it, and you can just see like those issues are replicating in your non-prod environment or not. Okay, so if it is replicating, then you can resolve it. Maybe some edge case got missed in your code, that's why it is coming. But sometimes it happens like the issue is working in your non-prod environment, but it's showing only in production environment. So how will you resolve those kind of problems? So there will be some stack trace, there will be some IDs, there will be some fields. You can just see like if client is giving some proper data. So most of the time it is like a data issue only, like client is not providing proper data. Okay, so with that data, it is expected that it should throw this error. Okay, so if that is the case, you need to analyze them and give them the proper documented reason, like why this is happening and why that should be the why this is the right implication, why this is the right thing to happen. Okay, those kind of things will happen. So whatever things you have actually done in production level issue, so that you can explain it to the interviewer. Okay, and comment it down in the chat box below, like if you have solved any kind of production issue, so what are the best possible ways to resolve this issue where it is not replicating in non-prod environment but it's replicating only in prod environment. How have you implemented and solved these kind of problems? Comment it down below. I also want to learn more from you all. The next question was, if issues are not replicating in non-prod and is popping up only in prod, how will you handle this? So I've already asked you this. Like, so this is the same question that I've repeated. Okay. So what is the biggest challenge you have faced in your project and how did you resolve them? So basically, manager wants to check on you, like actually any challenges you have faced or not, or you have just been given with a task and you are just assigned task you are doing. So you can tell like, yes, I have faced challenges where the timeline for that deliverable of that project was very small and we have to deliver that project well before time. So I was facing a lot of hiccups during that time, but we have managed to bear that and come out of that situation and solve that problem with a team of 4. We have discussed and we have sorted it out all the problems, and we have discussed with the client like how it can be done beforehand, and we have come to a conclusion like this particular duration is preferable, and during that time we will be going ahead with it, because sometimes clients expectations are very much unrealistic. They may tell you to do it within 5 days or 4 days. So you know, as a developer, we all know like what's the complexity of the task, how much time it may take. Okay, so you have to tell them beforehand only, before starting the task only, okay, this may take 7 days time or 8 days time. Okay, so if you are confident and that you can do it within 3-4 days, then only you can tell like yes, it's fine, or else you can tell beforehand, because that point of time, if you can show them the hope and confidence like yes, you can do it, but if you don't able to deliver it before time, maybe you want to give the best output with respect to code, but still it will give the bad impression on the client's mind, like you have told like you will do it within 4 days but it was not delivered. Okay, so whatever time it may take for you, you should tell them beforehand only, maybe 7 days, 8 days, 10 days. So it will give good sign to the client like you are having good grasp on what all things you are doing. Okay, so these are some of the biggest challenges, and you can also comment it down below what all kind of biggest challenges you have faced in your project and how have you solved it. Next was, how were you deciding how many story pointers needs to be assigned for a user story? Okay, so basically user stories are being decided based upon the complexity of the code, or the problem statement. So sometimes that problem or that requirement is everything we have to develop from scratch, nothing is there beforehand. And let's suppose you have to implement some spring batch mechanism, everything is we have to do it from scratch. So how will you design, how will you understand like how much user story pointers you can provide? So it depends upon like how much time it will take, what's the acceptance criteria, what is the and the result you want, okay, after the implementation, what's the input test cases range, okay, what is the actual implementation timing. Based upon that you have to come. So if there's some small change, then it will be either 1 or 2 pointers. If there is like a big change end to end, starting from configuration to implementation to testing to PR review, those all things, so mostly it will be 4 or 5 pointers. Okay, so based upon like how many changes you need to do, depending upon that, the story pointers will be decided. So basically it's told like it's a practice, like don't keep more than 5 pointers in your sprint. Okay, so sprint is basically of 2 weeks duration, right? So if it is going more than 5 pointers, then it should get divided into 2 stories. Like if it is 6 pointers, so divide it into 2 stories of 3 pointers each. So if you do that, it will be trackable, right? So if out of 6 pointer story, if you have completed one, so it will show the track record, like you have completed one story and you are working on a second. So it will give good indication to the client's mind, like you have done some task. But if you have created only one story of 6 or 7 pointers, then if it is not completed within the sprint, then what client will understand? You have been assigned to the task, but you haven't completed anything. Okay, so always and always it is advised, like if it is a big user story, try to divide it into smaller parts. Okay, I hope you got the clarity on this. The next question is, have you done any PR reviews? What all things you take care while doing any PR reviews? Okay, so PR reviews are to be done those who are interviewing at the lead level, for the lead level basically. Basically, if you are having more than 5 years of experience, 6 years of experience, then these questions can be asked, because below that you will not be reviewing, right? It's very, if you are very lucky, then you will get chance to review someone's code. I'm not telling about PR reviews, which is called first level review. I'm talking about that reviews which will get merged in the main branch. Okay, so those are being done at the lead level only, lead level people. Okay, so if you have done any PR reviews, so the questions can be like, what all things you take care of? So there are a lot of things you need to take care of, like you have done any proper, you have written proper import statements or not, proper logging mechanisms you have implemented. I will create a separate video on this, like how we should do PR reviews. Okay, there are like few 15-20 pointers you need to think of, you need to take care of. Okay, then static fields are used or not, because it may lead to memory leaks. Okay, then recursive calls are not written, how you are fetching the data from database, is it like multiple database interactions happening within a loop? Okay, and have you made use of any constants in your code, and you have not put it at one class, all the constants? Have you made use of constants directly? And if some code is common across all the modules, so you should create a utility class. So have you created that utility classes or not? There are multiple things you have to take care of. If you are opening up any streams, you should be closing that as well, or else make use of private resources. A proper exception handling you have done or not. So these are some of the things you need to understand. Okay, next. The next question is, how are you doing build and deployment processing? So it varies from project to project. Basically, some are doing build and deployment via GitLab, some are doing via Jenkins, some are deploying directly to AWS. So it depends from project to project. So whatever project you have done, but depending upon that, you can explain it to the interviewer. Okay, then how will you handle vulnerabilities in your project? Okay, so vulnerabilities are of various kinds, right? So if there's any DDoS attack, then how will you handle that? Okay, so basically you have to store password in a character array so that it will become much more secured. Okay, then you need to have a proper authentication and authorization mechanism implemented. Okay, then there need to be a sonar lint. Okay, that needs to be integrated in your IDE. So if sonar lint is integrated with your project, then after the implementation of all your project, then you can see in the website of sonar lint, like what and all vulnerabilities you are getting, like what and all bugs are there, what and all critical vulnerabilities, major vulnerabilities, medium level vulnerabilities. They will show you why a code smells in a code, like where and all it may have. So those you can resolve it. Basically the critical and major ones you need to resolve. Okay, so these are the things. Once you do it in your project, then you will get the idea on it. Next type of question, like how have you done end-to-end testing in your project? So basically I have done via Cucumber. So I have set it up, all the configuration framework of it, Cucumber framework I have designed in my application, in my project basically. So there I have done feature file setup, step definitions I have set up, and then I've written multiple Gherkin steps which are called scenarios. Okay, so those scenarios you need to write, and those scenarios we need to cover as well, all type of scenarios, edge cases, like if no file is passed in, what will happen? If file is crossing threshold, then what will happen? Everything needs to be covered in the scenarios, and that is the best way basically, because it will check each and everything, like your database is working properly or not, saving is happening or not, insertion happening, read operation, update operation happening or not properly, all scenarios are covered with proper, all business logics are being covered or not, everything will get tested with this Cucumber. So don't do only Jenkins, I'm telling JUnit, okay, for Mockito. That is fine, that will basically mock it. So try to implement end-to-end testing like Cucumber frameworks. Okay, so that will help you to understand, like, have you covered all kind of scenarios or not? Okay, have you implemented any kind of Cucumber frameworks for end-to-end testing? Just comment it down below. Then what are the things to be make sure of before starting any user story? What are the things you should be making sure of? So first of all the requirements should be very much clear what exactly you need to implement, because once sprint starts, at that point of time, you should not be in a situation to just learn and understand a problem. That should be the time to directly go ahead and implement. So before implementing, you need to understand the problem, right? So you have to have a review with your PRs, with your leads, okay, to understand actually what we have to implement in the user story. So if that is not clear, try to understand first the requirements, try to understand what are the acceptance criteria that needs to be done, then see like what's the due date, that because whenever the sprint starts, your scrum master will tell you like update all your due dates before starting the story, so that scrum master and all the leads will be aware of like how much time it may take for you to complete that story, so everybody will be tracking that. So those all things should be started. Then once everything is in place and you know what you have to implement, then you can start your story. Okay, like in progress you have to do from to do to in progress, then in progress to like if all development is done, you have raised your PR, then PR in progress. Okay, then after that code review, one section is there which you can move your PR, which you can move your Jira to, and then from there you can move to ready for testing, then done. So these are the multiple stages you can go through for your Jira. Okay, then the last question is always like, is there any question for me? So don't tell like I don't have any question, it will give like bad impression. You can tell like what kind of projects are being currently ongoing in the current application, or which is going on recently. Is there any um, cloud mechanism being implemented for deployment or not? So what kind of things are being implemented currently, and some what all things are going to come in future? These kind of questions tells us like you are being very much interested in understanding the actual code requirements which is going on. So it shows like you are interested. It doesn't like you are just coming up for the interview for one of the company. Okay, so always and always prepare with one or two questions that you can ask at the end. Okay, so these are the things that were being asked to me in my open text interview. I hope you liked it, you loved it. Just if you like it, please like, share and subscribe, because it takes effort to create such kind of contents. And we'll see you in the next video with the next set of content. Till then, it's Dave J. Troy signing off. Bye bye.